Elizabeth Chappell, a lifelong entrepreneur who finally found my niche. After years of new ideas and jumping from business to business, I figured out how to turn a craft into a successful career. In 2016, I started a monthly subscription box for quilters. That little startup has grown into a thriving, multiple six-figure business that I am so proud of. As a published author, designer of fabrics and patterns being sold throughout the world, my favorite thing to do is to teach others how to grow a career of their dreams. Each week, you'll hear from me or from other guests who are creative entrepreneurs, so you can learn exactly what to do and what not to do to grow a career that's more rewarding and successful than you ever thought possible. If you're ready to turn your craft into a career that you love, I am so excited you're here. Welcome to the Craft to Career podcast. I cannot wait for you to hear from our guest this week on the Craft to Career podcast. This is a guest who I've been wanting to have for a long time. I've taken some of his courses. I am a huge fan of his podcast. I don't even know. I'm going to let him introduce himself because I don't even know how he would introduce himself or describe what he does. So just, get excited for that. Before then, I want to invite you to leave a review for the podcast. It is because of your reviews, the reviews that people have left, that we are able to get guests like we have today, Joe Hudson. So please take a moment to do that. It's, a way to reward yourself and treat yourself to amazing guests. But more importantly, it will help other entrepreneurs to find this podcast, and it could make the world of difference to them in their creative journey. So take just a moment to leave a review of the podcast, and then let me introduce you to our wonderful guest this week, Joe Hudson. Joe, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. For our listeners, can you introduce who you are and what you're most known for right now?
Yeah. Who I am is Joe Hudson, and I'm a executive coach. I'm probably most known for the podcast that we do called Art of Accomplishment, as well as just the social media. And we do these courses about self-development that are very much about authenticity and finding out who you are rather than self-improvement. But it's also very applied. So it's not just gazing at your navel. It's how do you get to know yourself in a way that changes your productivity, that changes the way that you feel, the way that you interact, the way you communicate, the way you do business, the way you lead. So it's all very applied.
All right. Can I ask, what is navel gazing? You've mentioned it a few times, and I actually wanted to Google it, but what is that?
It might be even maybe too derogatory of a word, but it means that when you're looking at yourself so much that you lose perspective of the rest of the world. So, so for me, I meditated for almost all of 7 years. There were 7 years where I was in a room meditating most of the time. And there's a way in which you can fool yourself in meditation that you can't when you're out in the world doing business, or when you're out doing something creative, or when you're collaborating with people. There's a way that you can convince yourself of something that you can't when, if your business doesn't work and everything falls apart and you're not happy, you have to deal with that. It's real. And so navel gazing just is a way of saying that you're looking at yourself so much that perhaps you've lost perspective.
Which I have my notes here. I want to come back to that. I don't know if you remember, I took your connection course, and we did a coaching, like a flash fire, you remember that. Yeah. Okay. I was like, I don't know if he remembers or not. But what you just spoke about was my question. And I actually have questions that I will bring up later on this very topic, because it's so much easier to, in our minds, oh yeah, I'm good. And then real life comes and you're like, whoa, wait, how do I apply this? And, so. Right. Can you share with us your work history? It's fascinating.
Yeah, I'll do my brief version of it. It started off with college. Well, I got kicked out of one college, which we can't go into that story. It'll take too long. But I got kicked out of one college, and I graduated valedictorian from the second college. And then I butchered fish in Alaska, taught Head Start in the Hayes Valley projects. And then I did international stock lending. Then I did a couple of interim thing, like little financial things while I was in a band, recorded an album, toured. Then when I finished that, I started making movies. I made a short film, made a documentary, neither of which were like well known or did, but one of them had a star named Jane Lynch, which some people know, which was cool. And then and then at some point I realized that wasn't really for me. And I had this strange opportunity to do large scale video art installation. So I did that for a bit. I met some very wealthy families because that's the only people who buy that kind of art. And we started talking about investing. And next thing I know, I was a venture capitalist, investing for their family office and doing philanthropy specifically around consciousness for children. And then, which was tremendously fun and awesome, all that work was. And then at some point, I just noticed that I wasn't a great investor, and that meaning I didn't like in venture capital. The most important thing is to invest in great entrepreneurs. And I instead invested in places where I thought I was needed. That was my like psychological underpinning. I needed to be needed. And so I didn't do so well, recognized it, but then learned how to coach, because throughout this whole thing, I was meditating and doing my own self-discovery, which has always been the passion throughout all of it. Even through college, it was always been my passion. And so I just started coaching people with all the stuff that I had learned. And in that process, I found out I liked coaching more. I was better at it. And it made a difference for our company. So we did well in the investing space. But at the end of the day, all of a sudden I had a lot of people who wanted me to coach them. And pretty soon it was more people than I could handle. So we did classes, and pretty soon it was lots and lots of people. So we did online classes, and that's how it worked.
So do you still today, I get the feeling from listening to your podcast that you still do some coaching with like big companies. Do you do that?
Correct. Yeah. So it's really important for me to work one-on-one with people. I learn a lot that way, and I discover a lot about myself. And because it's this long, deep, intimate relationship, I only do year-long. Most of my clients have been with me for 3+ years. I only do 12 clients. Usually I lose maybe one a year, something like that.
How do they find you?
So to coach with me, it's really expensive, unfortunately, but because I only do 12. So, and they're almost all executives. They have to be somebody who has a project that I'm excited about. And then they have to do a week-long intensive with me to get coached with me. And then they sign up for years at a time. So I have a waiting list of people. I feel fortunate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're really good at what you do. It's actually, for those who haven't experienced it, you have this way of reading people. Like I told before we started, I was like, just so you know, I'm nervous because you're going to know regardless. Like there's something about a twitch in my eye or something, and you'll be like, you're nervous, or what was that? So yeah. You're good at what you do. Do you do any in-person things?
Yeah.
This is total selfish question here.
Yeah. So if somebody has done one of our longer courses online, or they were recommended by one of the executives that we work with, then we have a in-person 1 week long experience. We only do it 2 times a year. We trained somebody for 6 years to do it, 2 people, and now they just doing their first one. So there's a way to do it with them. So this might become more prevalent. We would like it to be, but my wife and I, Tara, work together on these, and we do them 3 times a year. And so only about 36 people get to go through them. But so we pick either people who've gone through the long courses, and that's really intense work. That is 9 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. It is big emotions. It's amazing work. And we've actually studied somebody from Harvard and somebody from Columbia, I think, did some tests to study the results of it. And we have like a significant result in both neuroses, like the reduction of neuroses, the reduction of self-talk, negative self-talk, the increase of thriving, which is a technically like a technical psychological term called thriving, increase in thriving, and increase in openness. And almost all of them like near standard deviation, which is really rare. And so, yeah, we do this very intense thing, and it's really cool. Those are very fun
That's
weeks.
amazing. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's in my future.
Okay.
Hopefully. So for my listeners, most of them are entrepreneurs, more at the beginning phase, some a little more into it.
Yeah.
Honestly, a lot of them have no idea how much our thoughts matter with work. You know, they're like, just tell me what to do. I need the checklist. Like what website should I have? What, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up a story and it ties in, but you were saying you were like somewhere, I don't know, in South America listening to, and you read a news article about in college, a buyout of Facebook or something for billions of dollars. Yeah. And you were like, these feelings came up and you realized it was around scarcity. And tell us a little bit about that and what was happening there for you.
Yeah. So I was actually a venture capitalist at the time, and WhatsApp was an app that was created. And I think it was like Sequoia, which was a big venture capital firm, didn't want to invest. So one guy invested like $500,000. And I was reading the article about how 2 years later, he was a billionaire with that $500,000. And I felt like a punch in my stomach, just like it was like a kick. And I was like, what is that feeling? And so I closed my eyes, and instead of thinking about it, I let my body take me to the place where I felt that the first time. And I recognized that was a feeling from my father. That was like, that feeling was the feeling I had when I was like trying to get and chase my father's love and not getting it. And I recognized in that moment, oh, I've just like, I used to run and chase my father's love, who was, you know, had alcohol problems and whatnot, abusive. And I just, when I left home, I just kept that energetic, emotional thing going, but I just did it with money. It just went from like, you know, my dad was somebody I wanted the love from, I loved, but also I thought was kind of heinous. Money was something that I wanted, that I loved, but I also thought was kind of heinous. You know, I was rebelling against my father, but still wanting his attention. I was rebelling against money, still wanting his attention. Like the entire relationship was identical. And I was like, oh, I'm not even interacting with money. I'm interacting with my dad. And that was one of the big shifts that allowed me to make a lot more money. And it wasn't even making, it was more like allowing money and I to have a healthy relationship.
This is amazing on so many levels. First of all, how does one get to a point where you can stem back to where that comes from? Because I've worked with, you know, therapists and stuff. They're like, what are you feeling? Where does that come from? And it's like, I'm in a room and the lights are off. I'm like, I don't know. So how does one get to a point? Because with a business, there's so many emotions, and until we can reach back, you know?
Yeah. I don't think you have to reach back with all of them. I think the most important thing is being able to identify the emotion that you're pushing away. So to give you an example of this, my daughter, when she was 17, she's like a junior year in the springtime. And we're having a conversation, and we start talking about the fact that she is like, doesn't like rejection. Like she when she feels the possibility of rejection happening, she walks away from that reality. And therefore, there's a whole bunch of possibilities in her life that aren't happening. So I said, well, let's just make rejection fun. I'll give you $2,000 if you get rejected 25 times by the end of the year, by the end of the school year. So she had like, whatever it was, like 2 months to get rejected 25 times. They had to be meaningful rejections, because I wanted to flip the idea of like, oh, rejection is bad, to, oh, cool. Like I'm getting rejected. This is the more of them I get, the closer I get to $2,000. And so she said, yeah, I'll take that on. And so she decided that she wanted to do something for the environment, and she wanted to have like an adventure. So she picked out all the places in the world that she really liked, and she went to all the environmental agencies, and she started writing letters to like get an internship, to do a project, whatever. And she got like 17 rejections before she got a job in Panama. Then she literally later on flew to Panama and stayed in an apartment there by herself in this place where she had some friends. So we had like enough community for her. And and like was on a boat studying mangroves. And in that process, the paperwork wasn't getting done because the U.S. paperwork and Panama paperwork. And she literally, because she got so good at rejection and because she had a couple more left, she literally drove to Sacramento to this Secretary of State's office, the California Secretary of State's, and sat in front of the building and asking everybody with a suit, I need this signed. Can you help me get into the building and get this signed?
Oh, that's amazing.
And so the point is that the emotion that she was feeling that she didn't want to feel was rejection. To make friends with that emotion changed her entire life from this point out. And that's what's happening. So all you really have to do is identify what emotion it is that you're avoiding, and how do you learn how to love that emotion? How do you learn how to see the wisdom of that emotion, the signal of that emotion, but mostly love it?
Let me take, because I've, polled my audience, what are some thoughts that get in the way of success?
Yeah.
And one of them is, let me pick one. Well, I'm afraid that others are going to judge me for success, for failure, fill in the blank, judge me for whatever.
I've got that one.
Okay.
This one I love. You're right. They already have, they're doing it right now. I guarantee right now there's somebody listening to this podcast judging me and somebody judging you. And if you go to the grocery store, someone's going to fucking judge you. And like, yes, that's right. People are going to judge you. People are judging you whether you succeed or don't succeed. People judge you because they don't want to feel an emotion. We judge somebody.
Hold on.
Yeah, right.
Say that again. Yeah.
Yeah. So anytime I don't want to feel something, that one of the ways to not feel it is to judge. So you can just finish the sentence. When I judge somebody for blank, I'm trying not to feel blank. And every time you look, when I'm judging somebody for not taking care of themselves, I don't want to have to feel my own perfectionism. Or if I'm judging somebody for doing shitty work, I don't want to feel abandoned. And so what's actually happening every time you judge is that's one of the greatest places to discover what you don't want to feel. But yeah, people are going to judge because people, especially in America, we really don't like feeling. we're not
Why
a bunch
is
of feelers.
That?
Yeah.
What happened there? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kids, they're told don't cry if you're a boy, don't get angry if you're a girl. I mean, in white culture and other cultures, it's don't get scared. It's, don't be so excited, Johnny, settle down. We get bribed out of our emotions. We get, and we also have experiences where emotions take us over. And so we're like, I'm not going to let that happen. Or we see our father rage and we say, we're not going to do that. So there's all sorts of reasons why we suppress our emotional experience. And I mean, it's to the point where if somebody's angry, I love this about humanity. So somebody's angry, I'm like, oh, great, let's get angry. And they're like, I can't do that. Oh, why not? Because it could hurt somebody. Okay. So the only idea that they have is I'm going to not get angry. I'm going to suppress angry, or I'm going to get angry and hurt somebody. Nobody ever thinks, I can just like go into the closet, get angry, come out. I can just go to the woods, get angry, come back. Nobody gets hurt. And I've moved my emotions. We don't even consider it as a possibility because emotions are so, repressed in our society.
Well, in crying, I work with majority women.
Yeah.
And if they ever start to cry, they will block it. And I can see it so much easier in others. I know I have my own, but they're like, right. No, I don't even want to talk about that because it'll make me cry. I'm like,
right.
And, but right. It's so uncomfortable. Very interesting.
Yeah. Right. And we all know that if we have a good cry, we feel better afterwards.
Yeah.
So in a weird way, what we're saying is, no, I don't want to feel better.
So one of the things I feel like you're saying is just allow yourself to cry and feel that, and you'll kind of pass through it.
Yeah. So there, it's a little trickier than that, but yeah. So the easier emotions to learn how to feel are what we call negative emotions. So it's easier to learn how to feel sadness and anger and fear. What's harder to feel is excitement and bliss and joy. And when I say harder, I just mean we resist it more than we resist the negative emotions. Negative emotions, and also the way the system works. I have a saying that is like, joy is the matriarch of a family of emotions, and she won't come into a house where her children aren't welcome. And So those other emotions have to be felt through before like joy starts showing up or peace starts showing up in a consistent way. So in general, yes, the idea is to allow your emotions to be felt and express them. There's a couple things to be aware of. When you start feeling emotions, you're going to get a lot more of them for a while. It's like releasing a hose. It's going to for a bit before it like hits its normal flow. The other thing is you can get stuck in an emotional cycle. So like for men, often they'll get angry in this culture. Men will get angry and the anger kind of like keeps on circulating. It doesn't move. It's because what they're not allowing themselves to feel is the sadness or the grief or the fear underneath it. So if you express emotion and it's moving, and then it kind of stagnates, oftentimes it means there's another emotion underneath it that you're using instead. So there's some subtleties in it, but in general, yes, allow your body to feel the emotions. Because like right now, you and I, if I say stop feeling, or all the viewers who are listening to this right now, just stop feeling your emotion. Like we always have an emotional experience. If you actually say right now, I'm going to stop feeling all my emotions, what you'll notice is that your muscles constrict. They have to. And so if you're chronically not letting yourself feel something, you're chronically having muscle constriction, weight, heaviness, tension. And so
which is not good. Yeah.
Which is it's not healthy. Yeah, but
no,
yeah.
No, not at all. And okay, this is something that I've been wanting to ask you. And so I'm so glad I have you. You've mentioned before people who say that business is a game, that's fine, but you'll be miserable by the time you're 40.
Yes.
Tell me more, because forever business has been a game to me. I want to hear about this. So yeah, tell me more.
So the thing that really works about business being a game is that you take it less personally, right? So if you take business personally, like, oh, they rejected my product, they don't like my thing, business becomes a lot harder. So there's a benefit of seeing business as a game, without a doubt. But if business is just a game and it's not a purpose, it's not a passion, if it's not aligned with who you are, then it's going to be a way to make money. It's still an oppressor. It's still not going to make you happy. And so eventually you're going to get the thing that you want, and then you're going to realize you're miserable because you're now the blinders are off. So you've reached your goal, and then you're like, ugh, this sucks. Whereas if business is something that is your passion and your purpose and you love, then you're not going to be miserable. And without that alignment in life, generally, you're leading yourself to misery eventually.
Is there like an intersection of, I love this and it's my passion and I can be successful money? Because now like the pendulum has swung so far the other way that I'm almost demonizing money, to where like, well, if I am successful, then clearly I'm not in it with my heart. So how do you marry those two things? I
am wildly successful, and there's not one moment of what I do that I don't like. So that's how I do. That's how I marry it. I think my experience is when I see entrepreneurs align with their passion, they become more successful than if there's some people who, have a mentality where it's, like I did with my father, which was like, I can't be myself and get the love or attention that I want. So therefore I can't be myself and I can't get the money. And I have a psychological way of pushing all that stuff away from me. But most people, when they find that passion and that love, there's no choice about what they're going to do. They're going to do that thing. And because of that, they're going to be successful. Success is so much based on, are you going to persevere? Are you going to stay in the game? Are you going to enjoy what you're doing? Do the people around you want to be with you because you enjoy what you're doing? So many sales are based on relationships. So many great business partnerships or employee boss partnerships are based on relationships. And if you're not in love with what you do, you're not going to get as great talent around you. So my experience is that it absolutely is the same thing.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel like what's happened is, remember, in like, maybe you don't, but I as an old guy, like in the 70s, it was like there was business and there was environmentalists, and they were on the separate side of it. If you couldn't be one or the other, that was it. Ugh. And then somewhere in the 90s, people were like, hey, I can be an environmentalist and a business person, like all of a sudden everybody was like, no, this can actually make us money. I think it's the exact same way now with like business can be a spiritual path and you are more successful if it is one. Business can be a form of your passion. You're more successful. As a matter of fact, like when I look at the great entrepreneurs and I get to work with them, right? I get to work with amazing, CEOs and entrepreneurs and billionaires. And what I notice is none of them are in it for the money. They're in it to win the game, or they're in it to change the world. They're in it to, democratize publishing. They have a vision that is far bigger. I've seen some of them, they're just like, they're in it to win the game, but that's actually their passion. Their passion is competitive, winning, domination. Like that's their passion.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing to like have someone come out and be like, how could you, or something not go well and have that fuel you. It's not necessarily like, well, then you're bad. It's right. That's just what fuels you.
Yeah, I don't really go into the good or bad piece very much. Like, I think that's a huge, so what our mind will do is say money's bad or being competitive is bad, and it's just a choice and it has ramifications. So if I'm going to take business just as a game, but I'm not passionate about winning and playing the game, then there's just a ramification that at some point it's not going to leave you happy. That's not bad. That's just what happens, right? It's just like, it's not bad to eat pizza. It just makes you feel the way pizza makes you feel. So to me, calling it good or bad sets up a dichotomy in the mind that only causes war with yourself. And in a war with yourself, you always lose.
Okay. An interesting thing that I've seen on social media is, and actually across our country, I can't speak to other countries because I'm not as, in this, but where people will say like, you need to think this way. I even saw a post that I was going to repost it, but then I didn't because I read all the comments. It was like, I care less about who you vote for and more how you care I care more about how you treat someone who votes differently than you. And I was like, oh, that's beautiful. And the comments were like, no, you're wrong. The topics are too important. The stakes are too high. I was like, we can't even talk about being kind, like,
right,
yeah. This fear of pissing people off because we can't even be kind because the stakes are too high. Like how do we sit with, no, this is what I think and how I feel. And I don't want to be a jerk and be like, I mean, you can think that, we just think differently, I don't know.
So what's the question?
How would you? I know.
There's a lot there.
I hate when people are like, what's the question? I'm like, just speak to what you're thinking. But so I guess how in a business setting, how can a business owner feel empowered to just kind of own their truth, post what they believe, and sit with, how do you respond to people who are like, no, you're wrong. You need to be using your platform for this. You need to talk about this. Like, how does one handle that?
So for me, there's like, it's that thing about judging you. You're going to be judged for anything that you do. My question is like, what's actually authentic to me? What creates joy in my system? So for me, then that's the most important thing. And I will take whatever risk I need to take to do that. But I also I have not found any joy in telling other people how to think. Like if you look at the way that I design courses, it's like experiments. It's like, here's the thing. What do you take out of it? I don't think that there's like some mental construct that's going to like free everybody's mind. It's about self-exploration. So if you look at societies throughout generations, there's been 1,000 mental constructs from Kant to this political party's platform and none of it has created a situation where everyone's like, okay, now we're all happy. Like that's just not how it works. So for me, it's just about being authentic and honest with yourself and doing that in a way that is kind, because kind is a choice that you can make. Eventually you're going to realize that being kind, not nice, but being kind is just very satisfying. You just can't feel great about yourself if you're not kind. Yeah.
What's the difference between nice and kind?
Nice means that you're wanting, in my world, nice means that you're wanting people to like you. And so you're doing the things to make people like you. Kind means that I will do something that is compassionate, even if it makes you hate me, right? It is like kind is, hey, you're an addict. Hey, son, you're an addict, and I'm not gonna like let you in my house if you're using. That's not nice, but it's kind. Gandhi was very kind, but wasn't nice. The British weren't like, wow, Gandhi's being really nice to us.
It's not what they wanted to hear. I've also heard you say like you would never hire someone on your team or promote them if they couldn't have the uncomfortable conversation.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Tell me about that.
Well, so I'll give you an example of this one, especially because you have entrepreneurs. And so a lot of entrepreneurs, they wrestle with this thing where they walk into a room, they have their team, they say, we're going to do this. Everybody goes, yeah, we're going to do this. And then nobody does the thing. There's like the alignment isn't there. And so what I'll teach entrepreneurs to do often is do something I call the no doctrine, which is, hey, I want to do this. Tell me every reason why we shouldn't. Tell me what's wrong with it. Tell me the problems. And each one of those no's, one is the resistance that they have to doing it. So you're addressing those. But two, there's a little bit of wisdom to make the solution better, right? So that every one of their no's, there's some, maybe it's like just 0.01%, maybe it's 50%, but they're going to help make that solution better. And so then you're collaborating to find through the no's to find the better solution. And then you execute on that, and then everybody's aligned. If there's one person who's defensive, that doesn't work. Defensive means like they need to be right? Which means they can't have the hard conversation. So, and it's like, could you imagine going to war and you're like in the trenches and someone's like, dude, hand me the ammunition. And they're like, hey, I don't need you to talk to me like that. Like, what, do you think I got the ammunition wrong last time? Why are you yelling at me? Right? And I'm not saying that we should yell at each other, but you really want a team that's cohesive where people aren't taking things personally. That's really, really important if you're going to be effective.
Okay, now I'm like questioning, do I approach people the wrong way? I don't feel like a lot of people love being corrected. And maybe, like I said, maybe I'm approaching it the wrong way. But if I approach someone with, I don't know, an idea, a suggestion, generally I find that they're like, no, or defensive. Or so, I mean, is that the approach? Is it without giving specifics, what would be your guess?
Oh, yeah. So exactly, like, here's my idea. What speaks against it is different than here's what I think we should do.
Okay.
Right. One is, this is the idea. Tell me what you think about it, because I want your wisdom to improve the idea. And now we have a slightly new, varied idea that we're going to go execute on. That seems to be something.
Yeah. Well, that seems to be something.
That seems to be something that creates that alignment.
Okay.
But oftentimes, like in business, I will, like, just last night, I was writing an email to somebody, and I had a full idea of how we should do something, but I said, how do you want to pursue this? And here are the things that I think are important, criteria of the solution. So what's your solution? And here are the things that I think are important to hit. But I'd love to hear how you would want to execute on it. And I'd like to hear if I was wrong on any of these things. And so they feel very empowered and very strong in what they're doing. They feel autonomy, which is really important to people, to not feel like they're told how to do it. Micromanaging sucks, but most people want direction. They want, oh, this is what we're aiming for. And they want to be able to debate that direction. So for me, it's like giving them all that.
Okay. I found myself wanting to go back and rewind and listen to what you just said. I'm really glad we're recording this, because I'm like, wait, that's really good. How did you word that again? And
the general thing is that the more important thing isn't how I said it, it's what's behind what I said. And what's behind what I said is, I know that together we will have a better solution than me alone, and I also know that I want to empower you. I want to give you autonomy so that you don't need me anymore. So even if you make a couple mistakes now, in the long run, that's going to really pay off because I'm less necessary. And the third thing that I know is that that the solution that they believe in will work better than an equally good solution that they don't believe in. So their belief in it is actually a really important part of the execution of it. And so
That
if you
is
know
true.
those three things, then how you communicate it will naturally, if you know those in your body, that how you communicate it will naturally
What if you
be.
don't believe the first one? What if you don't believe that together? Because like me, type A listening, I'm like, I don't know that I believe that. Like, how do you get to trust that?
Yeah.
I guess try it. I don't know.
And what, and trust, which one in particular?
Um, I think that what we can come up with together will be better than what I can come up with
Come
on
up
my
with.
own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes a while to figure that one out. So the other thing to know is that at the end of the day, you do get to make the call. So no matter what they think, if it's really important, I'll say, this is really important, I get to make this call. And that, knowing that instead of defending that, actually takes a lot of the charge out of the situation. But no matter what your thought process is, it's not perfect. And so their resistance is some flashlight onto the imperfection of the thought process. So like you see this all the time in companies where the technical people say, this is a solution. And the marketing people say, no, this is a solution. And the best solution is the one that marries those two things. Or you're in a marriage and the husband is like this and the wife is like, no, this. Most likely it's the thing that they can both agree on that's going to be the most effective solution. Getting there, once you get there 3 or 4 times, you'll know it. But dropping that, like, it doesn't matter if I get my way, that's a long psychological trick that usually has to do with like going into a pattern in your childhood of having like deeply out of control because you had a parent who was, I made it, I realize I'm in a podcast and I'm making visuals, but a parent who was creating some chaos in the house. So usually when there's a lot of chaos in the house, then there's this feeling of like, very important to have things in control. And so there's that emotional work to be able to loosen that control.
Do you have one of your courses that would be good to address that?
Yeah. So, I mean, the best address of that is like having big emotional releases typically. So the masterclass, which is basically like the 7 things that I see entrepreneurs struggle with. And we spend a week on each one of those. So that's
communication or...
No, it's just called the masterclass. So we have the connection course, which is all about communication. We have the decision course, and then we have the masterclass, which is the 7 thing that entrepreneurs go through. And then we spend a week on each of them.
Okay. Yeah. So masterclass,
yeah.
When does that open? How often does that open?
It's only once a year. It's limited. We only will take 100 people this year. I think that's the max. Every year we're like, can we do a little more? Can we do a little more? And this year we're going to do 100 people. And so, I think sign up is in May.
Ooh, it's right around the corner. Okay.
Right around the corner. Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
I would love to hear, I guess this kind of goes into business as a game, but you have mentioned a couple times, like you worked with a CEO and then he retired. And for 2 years, he was in a bathrobe and just kind of like, bleh. So what happened there? Do you recommend that? Like what?
Yeah. No, I don't recommend it, but it may not be. So most of the CEOs I work with are like super high, powered, running tens of thousands of people or something like that. And so there's a lot of strain in the system. So if you look at, say, traditional Chinese medicine, they'll talk about depression being on the other side of anxiety, or if your adrenal glands get cooked because you're running around on fire every day. And so a lot of the times those CEOs are like recovering from 5, 7, 10, 20 years of all adrenaline all day long. So that's what's happening there typically. And so on the nervous system level, they go into a depression. And then, but because they're CEOs and they're high performers, then they start beating themselves up typically. Just to be clear, you can be a high performer without beating yourself up, but typically high performers beat themselves up a lot. And so then they're beating themselves up for being depressed, which only makes the whole thing last longer rather than, I just really need to rest. So I'm going to do that really well. I'm going to, go to a Ayurvedic massage place for whatever. I'm going to do this retreat. I'm going to do 10 days of silence. Yeah. Like I'm going to really rest really well. Instead, they just beat themselves up for not resting or for resting and not resting enough, etc. And so that lasts a long time. That's what that's about. I don't recommend it. A balanced lifestyle seems to be much better. I lead a very intense life, but I take at least 1 week of vacation every quarter and a month off in the summer so that I can recover and be with myself. I really like being in my own consciousness, and I'm always in other people. So to just be able to, I'll literally go off without family or anything for 3 weeks. And typically I'll do like 5 days of silence a quarter.
Which after listening to your podcast, I'm trying to get my husband like, would you come on a silent retreat with me? Actually, I haven't said it to him. If he listens to this podcast episode, he'll be like, wait, what? You want to do what? But I do. I really do.
Don't do it with your husband. Don't do it with us. Do it yourself. Do it by yourself.
Okay. Are we just going to be too like, hey, what's up? Or I don't know.
You're too tempting. You got to take all the temptation. If you're going to do a silent retreat, it's like leave your phone at home and like don't have internet connection, don't have a television, Which it's just too
saying, leave your phone at home already. My anxiety's going up. Like, so which means I should probably do it. So, okay. Yeah. Very interesting. Are there people who don't beat themselves up? I've yet to meet someone that I know of who is like, doesn't do that.
Yeah. I think the stats are something about like 1% of the population, maybe a little bit less, doesn't have a repetitive negative self-talk.
Who are those people and
most of them have done a significant amount of self-work.
Okay. I'm probably talking to one right now. I feel honored. I'm hypothesizing here, but I could be.
I definitely had a moment where the negative self-talk in my head reduced greatly. I have very few repeating thoughts. Yeah. Still something that my to-do list still repeats a little bit.
Okay. What are some books? I know you've talked about, there's a parenting, like a parenting thing that really helped you with your kids. Oh man,
there's nothing, if you have young children, there's nothing like, as far as a spiritual practice goes, and as far as raising really healthy children, Hand in Hand Parenting is amazing. The book is called Listen. The organization is called Hand in Hand Parenting. It changed my life. It's such a beautiful thing. Patty Whiffler, the woman who ran it, I worked with her nonprofit to help grow it as an investor, but I also, she was a mentor of mine, and just lovely. Yeah. In fact, I had this great moment a year ago where I found out that one of Patty's children had found me and was doing my courses. And it was like this really sweet moment of, I got so much from your mother, and really nice.
The circle of life. So what other books and like, where do you go for you have courses. Where can people go?
Yeah, I don't do meditation. There's a lot of choices for meditation, and it's a little bit dependent on the personality type. I used to recommend a guy named Adyashanti a lot, but he just retired, unfortunately. Spirit Rock in California is a nice place to do regular Vipassana meditation. If you don't have any money, Dhamma.org, you can do free 10-day silent retreats. Those are very intense retreats. It was my first time meditating, was doing 10 days at a Vipassana. So if you want to be really intense, that's a good way to do it. That's like the most intense meditation I've done. There's lots of different teachers, Eckhart Tolle or Rupert Spira, lots of folks. There's Zen meditate. Zen, like most towns nowadays, at least in California, have a Zen place somewhat near them. You can go meditate in the afternoons. Those are good. But as far as like the reducing the negative voice in your head, that's what our week long is all about. And I would say that there's lots and lots of paths to that. Meditation is one of them. Typically, that's a pretty long path. It's best to put time into meditation and some more emotional stuff like what we do. I think other things that people do that I know are useful, like core energetics, if you can find a really good core energetics practitioner.
This is way out in left field, but we've talked about adrenal glands, and my question is, do you drink caffeine? Are you concerned with healthy eating? Do you get a lot of sleep? Like, how are you with that aspect of your life?
Yeah, that's a great one. Caffeine, my experience, like right now, I haven't had caffeine for a long time, but some point this year, I'll drink caffeine and then I will not drink caffeine and drink caffeine. So I have an on again, off again relationship with caffeine typically that revolves around my vacation time. So like if I've had a vacation recently, I'm not drinking caffeine. And then if I'm about to have a vacation, I'm more likely to be drinking caffeine. But yes, I find that the physical thing is really important. I also, my genetics say that I can synthesize caffeine differently than most people. So that's good. But in general, yeah, eating right, feeling good they're just great. Like exercising, I think it's really important stuff. I think exercise is one of the best time management tools that I know. So if you don't exercise, it's like you're far more likely to be wasting your time than if you are exercising. So yeah, all of that stuff I think is really, really important. I am by no means a guru of that stuff. Like I like the 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time I'm doing pretty healthy and 20% of the time I'm eating something that's going to make me feel like crap the next day or, something, drinking coffee or something like that. Yeah. But I don't do really any drugs. Very seldom drink.
There's a lot of shame that goes around that. Even when I was in the course that I took, we had to like say some thoughts. I'm probably going to get this wrong, but say something that we think, and our partner would say like, I'm not here to judge you. Yeah. And one of the things I said was like, I judge myself for not working out enough or not eating enough vegetables. And she was like, well, I don't judge you. And in my mind, I'm like, well, you should be. It matters. Like if we don't care, then we'll die early, So there's so much like the tighter you hold on and resist it.
Yeah. Well, so check this out. So here, if you think about all the bad habits that you wanted to stop, that you haven't stopped, and it's been 5 years of you wanting to stop it, but you haven't stopped it, I can tell you something about all those habits. That every one of those habits, every one of those habits you tell yourself you should not do. Because telling yourself you should not do something is a very inefficient way to not do something.
So you just say
it's not saying that it's just that shaming yourself doesn't actually doesn't change your behavior. That's
what
all.
Does. I am that person that's like, just tell me the magic pill and I'll do it.
Yeah. So in masterclass, we have a whole week on wants over shoulds is what we call it. And so it's allowing yourself to really get experience with the want and feeling the pain of not doing it. That will take care of it. But you tell yourself you should not, like you should do that. You're like, so like, here's something that most people have experienced. I really should work out. I really should work out. I really should work out. What's actually happening in that moment is you have an impulse to work out. And then instead of just following that impulse, you layer on I should, which actually blocks the impulse. And then let's say finally you work out. Maybe it's a week from now you work out. And then your mind goes, I should have worked out harder. So you beat yourself up, which is not like motivating. That's not how, like, it's not how you get kids to do something, is to beat them up, right? Like not with any kind of joy or joie de vivre. And then they do it and then you beat them up again. It's like, why on earth are you not exercising every day? That's why, because it's just a self-abuse session. Where if it's like, oh, I really want to work, like, oh, I'm just going to take a minute to feel what I really want. Oh, I want to work out. Oh, I'm working out. This feels good. How do I make it feel better? Oh, congratulations for working out. Then you're rewarding the system to actually work out. So and I discovered this in the weirdest way. I like had this moment. I think I was like 26 years old and I was sitting at my desk and I'm like, there's a whole bunch of things I'm not being honest with about myself. So I wrote them on a piece of paper. Don't work out enough, blah, 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 blah. And I folded the piece of paper and I forgot about it. About 6 months later, I found it and I opened it up and I scratched off each of the ones that were different. I'm like, this is different. This is different. This is different. And then I'm like, well, what's the difference between the ones that changed and the ones that didn't change? And I was like, oh, they all have shoulds. They're all, I'm shaming myself on all of these things.
So if you get the inclination, I should work out, how could you just say like, I'm feeling some shame right now? I mean, how do you cope with that?
Do I want to work out?
And what if you say, yeah, I do, but I don't know, but whatever. Then maybe you don't really want to, or?
Yeah, then you're waiting. There's like 6 levels to this. So there's lots of ways to look at it, which would be hard to go into. But for instance, what's the way that I want to exercise? Instead of I should exercise, how do I want to exercise? What's the way that would be the most enjoyable way to exercise? So that's all ways of following your want. When do I want to exercise? Right. So all of those are like, most people just go, I should work out more. And that's the end of the discussion, because shame just stops discussions. Instead of, okay, what is the funnest way? When would I want to do it? How is it easiest to do? How do I make it part of my routine? What's the way that I can, like, all those questions that can make it something that's fun, enjoyable. Like, so for instance, if I'm guessing about you, working out with people would be a lot easier than working out by yourself. Mm-hmm. If you had a friend and you got to talk and you got to exercise together. So instead of saying, I should exercise, call up 10 friends and say, or announce it on your podcast. Anybody who lives in, this part of Texas, I want to do a walking group, like whatever. Like, so I think it's all about finding the joy and the want instead of being in the should. And noticing that when you have a should, there is a want there, and getting in touch with the want instead of the should. Like, you just say it out loud for a minute, just say, I want to work out. Like, there's a part of you that wants to work out. Mm-hmm. So just say, I want to work out, and feel it in your body for a minute.
I want to work out.
Yeah. And now say, I should work out.
I should work out. It feels worse. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and with business, I'm thinking, for the listeners who are like, how does this relate to business? Well, it all does relate, but let's just talk about business. So many people are like, I should be posting on Instagram. I should be da 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 da. And they're thinking, I should start a business, but they have a desire, but maybe somehow they've heard, well, that's what you have to do. But if all the things you've just said, you could say, well, how do you want to do it? What would be fun for you?
That's right. Absolutely. And, or like, if you're starting a new business, no, you shouldn't be on Twitter or Instagram. You should be on one potentially, or there's another way you could do a newsletter. There's like 70 ways to get the word out, and none of them are shoulds. There's companies that have made their entire living off of Instagram, some that make an entire living off of Twitter. So there's that aspect of it. And it's also like, what sounds most fun to you? What's exciting? And then there's like, no, you don't have to do it. You can delegate that shit, like, also on top of it. So there's so many levels of it. And as soon as you say, I should do that, all that creativity gets lost, because should just stops. It just stops it. It's like should stagnates. It stagnates emotions, and it stagnates progress.
That's liberating for the listener. As soon as you hear should, like, evaluate that and see what's going on. Yeah,
exactly.
There.
There's an old saying, I don't know if it's still around, but it's like, I'm shoulding myself. Right? I'm shitting myself again. Yeah.
Oh, that's clever. I like it. Yeah. So, okay, last question that I have, and then I want you to be sure to share where people can find you. I listened to your most recent podcast on listening. Yeah. And how do you get people to listen? And you were like, you don't. And this was the thing at the beginning of the podcast that I was like, we're going to come back to this. But I guess I'm a real type A control freak. And so that's been a conflict in work, in my marriage, with all relationships. And I don't know if you remember what you said, but speak to whatever comes to your mind now. But how would you answer that? How do you tell someone or get someone to listen?
Yeah, so I would pick people to be around who listen, probably. Like, I notice most people listen and I listen well. I would listen well because that often helps them know to listen. I might ask them, I might say, hey, I would really love to be listened to right now. Could I just share for 10 minutes and you not speak? Or I might want reflective listening, where I say something for a while and then you tell me what you heard, so I know that you heard me, and I might ask for that. But I would never, forcing people to do stuff or getting them to do stuff, it's not possible for me to love somebody and do that at the same time. And if I shut down my heart to somebody, the pain is so much greater than anything that I might get from controlling them, right? So the reward of controlling them typically is you're going to get what you want. You're going to get what you want because then you're going to feel safe. right? Well, I feel safe if my heart is open, if I'm in love, And so if I'm trying to change or manipulate or control somebody, I have to shut down my heart to do it. I have to close. And that's not a price I'm willing to pay for it.
Yeah. And I loved, you said something as well about if you want them to listen, then listen to them. And I just thought of all the behaviors that I want others. And I'm like, man, if I just showed up that way, if the world, that's where I instantly jump into wanting to fix other people. If the world could just do this, I'm like, no, Elizabeth, just you show up the way you want. And the rest is literally out of my control,
That's right. Also, that's where your freedom is. If I get pissed off because you're not listening to me, I'm not free. If I can have an open heart, if you're listening to me or not listening to me, then I get my freedom. So for me, the focus isn't just there's no amount of me being able to control the world that gives me freedom. There's people who control the world far better than I do. Putin, Xi Jinping, and I don't see happiness there. I don't see freedom there. So for me, it's can I keep my heart open what's necessary for me to keep my heart open right now is absolutely the question that I stay in, because that's where my freedom is. The other thing that's interesting, we have this thing about projections that I think I have a podcast on it you might want to listen to, but oftentimes when someone's saying, you're not listening to me, that's also happening for them. They're also not listening. Right. So if you see that, you can see this in the political debates all the time, the thing that somebody accuses one person of is actually happening to them, it's happening when you see it in marriages all the time. You don't do enough around the house. It's we call it projections. And so oftentimes when you listen to and somebody feels heard, they want to listen. We all want to listen when we feel heard. We all don't want to listen when we don't feel heard.
Well, and when someone loves me or I feel like, oh, they like me, I like them back. I don't care how annoying they are. If they like me, I'm like, there's a place in my heart. I just love you because you love me. So yeah, I mean, the hard thing then is for me to just learn how to love others when they might not be so lovable, but that's usually when they need it the most. So it's this weird,
Also, the things that are hard to us to love in others are the things that are hard for us to love in ourselves. So it's this great, every time I find somebody that's hard to be lovable, I get really excited because I know that there's a part of them that they're expressing that as in me that I don't love in myself. So I get a chance to love something in myself that I don't love.
Ooh, I like that, but I don't like that.
Awesome.
So yeah, this has been fun. Thank you. And for our listeners, they're going to want to know where to find you. Where is the best place to find you?
Yeah, thank you. I always forget that. artofaccomplishment.com, Art of Accomplishment, the podcast. We just recently got told that we were the 35th most listened to self-help podcast in the history of podcasts, which is kind of cool.
Wow.
That's cool. And then you can find me FU Joe Hudson on Twitter
which literally does stand for F you,
fuck you,
Joe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That came because when people had big epiphanies, that they started that started becoming a thing. So if someone has an epiphany, they're like, fuck you, Joe, one that they don't want to see, but gives them freedom. And then I think that's it. Those are good. I think we have a YouTube channel too, but I don't know the name of it. We just started it.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Joe, thank you so much. What an amazing conversation. I have just so much respect for Joe. I hope that you were able to glean so much from what he said. I know I myself will be listening and re-listening to this episode. There was so much, it was like drinking from a water hose where it's just coming out full force. And if you've been around for a minute, you know how much I feel like so much of our success has to do with our mindset and our thoughts. And what a great mentor and tutor to have than Joe Hudson to help you with that. So thank you so much for being here. And I'll be back next Friday with a brand new episode of the Craft a Career podcast. Until then, have a wonderful week. Take care.